Hello, everybody, and welcome to Creating Equity in STEM, a CPASS Foundation live podcast series presented by CPASS Foundation, featuring conversations with distinguished professionals in the STEM and STEAM fields. By exposing and educating Black and Brown students on the educational pathways and career opportunities STEM and STEAM have to offer, CPASS Foundation leadership and partners create a trusted pipeline to activate more schools, families, and communities to decide to engage more young people to choose science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine STEM degrees. I'm JinJa Birkenbeuel, brand advisor, writer, and host of this conversation for the CPASS Foundation. In today's episode of our 2024 season finale, we're having a vibrant conversation with Dr. Coretta Patterson. Dr. Patterson was born and raised in Chicago on the South Side and graduated from Whitney Young High School in 1987. She was a member of CHAMPS throughout high school. Dr. Patterson earned a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree and 2 Bachelor of Science degrees from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Upon graduation from Veterinary College, she completed an internship in small companion animal medicine at Michigan State University and subsequently completed a residency in small animal internal medicine. Dr. Patterson holds licenses to practice veterinary medicine in Arizona, Illinois, California, Georgia, Kansas, Michigan, Nevada, and New Mexico. Prior to her appointment as the Dean of College of Veterinary Medicine, Dr. Patterson served as the Director of Office of Professional Success at the Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine. Previously, she held a leadership position as the Group Medical Director at Blue Pearl Specialty and Emergency Pet Hospital. Her passion for education is evident through numerous teaching appointments, including positions at the University of Nevada, Michigan State University, and Midwestern University. With a wealth of experience, Dr. Patterson has held appointments on several professional committees and helped advance the field through the co-authorship of research articles and professional publications, such as the Journal of Veterinary and Medical Education, Veterinary Medicine, and the Journal of the American Hospital Association. Recognized for the depth of her expertise, Dr. Patterson is also a sought-after speaker at national professional conferences. In keeping with our mission, vision, and purpose, we will learn today about Dr. Coretta Patterson's STEM journey from preschool to college, and also gain her insights into what we can do to ensure that there are more Black and Brown students in the pipeline to STEM careers. Then we need to understand strategies for how to best help Black and Brown graduates find and earn opportunities in the healthcare workforce. Thank you all for joining us today. On behalf of the CPASS Foundation, formerly the Chicago Area Health and Medical Careers Program, I want to take a moment to thank all of our program and strategic partners, donors, key stakeholders, and the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus who have supported our mission at the CPASS Foundation. If you or your company are interested in supporting the CPASS Foundation's mission and scholars, please go to cpassfoundation.org/invest to learn how to give. This conversation will be recorded and available wherever you listen to your podcast, including YouTube. Let's get started. Welcome, Coretta.
Thank you, JinJa. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us on Friday. Happy New Year and happy holidays. So, first of all, I am completely obsessed that you seem to love animals. So before we kind of get into what you've been doing, for your career and how you got here, I want to understand, how did you come to love animals?
So that actually has been a question I've been asked a lot. So I can start with, I'm an interesting amalgamation. My father is from, I always say, Bootstrap, Alabama. He's from northern Alabama, 87 miles from the Tennessee line, from a small place called Tanner, Alabama. And they had a hobby farm. And like a lot of Chicago kids, every summer I got sent down to my grandmother's house, basically for the entire summer. And so they had cows, horses, pigs, goats, chickens, guinea fowl, ducks, rabbits. And I would go help my uncle feed them. I would go follow him around and do all kinds of things. And so that started my love for animals. I was exposed to a wide variety of animals at a very young age, and I wasn't necessarily afraid of them. I still don't love snakes, but but the animals that they raised, I had to go help my grandmother feed the chickens. I had to collect the eggs. When she moved the young chicks from the one place to the next place, we all had to help with that. So I had a lot of exposure to a variety of farm animals at a pretty young age, and I liked them.
And you like them. I love that. Yes. There's so many films about children and farm animals, and so I really appreciate that. So what I didn't hear you talk about was what was the experience with the animals, because I feel like you're not describing pets, you're actually describing animals, on a farm. But what transformative experience did you have with the animals that led you to your current role?
So we did have pets in the house. I remember an orange cat. The cat didn't come in the house. Like when we lived on 89th Street, we had a cat named Calico, and I don't remember that cat ever coming in the house. But from the time that I lived off Stony Island until I was 15, we had a shepherd mix named Rusty. I don't remember where Rusty came from, but we had him most of my life, and he was very well known. In fact, I was just my parents' house is on the market now, and I was just telling somebody recently. I remember very vividly sitting outside on the ground in front of my parents' house with our family dog, and this guy walked past. I have two other brothers. The guy was older than me. I didn't know him. He walked by me and said, "What's up, Rusty?" So my dog Rusty was very well known in the neighborhood. Everybody knew Rusty. There are stories of a dog running loose in the neighborhood, and Rusty got in between one of our neighbors and that other dog to protect her from the dog. So we did have that special dog, and I love dogs to this day. But we also did have a couple of cats when I was growing up. So yeah, we had the pet experience, and I will say there was at least one pig in Alabama that my cousin referred to as Pet Pig. So there were pet farm animals. They weren't all necessarily raised for food. Some of them were just hanging out. So again, a lot of animal exposure, but my primary exposure was that we did have a family dog almost all of my life. But aside from that, when I was about 9, I told my mother that I wanted to get parakeets. And this is, my mother was really dope for this. She said, "You can get parakeets, but you're going to get a book about parakeets first," which she bought me. And she told me to read it. And then she read it. And then she quizzed me about how I have to take care of a parakeet before I was able to get the 2 parakeets. And I just think that that was absolutely brilliant because we had dogs. We didn't have birds. They're completely different. And I love that she took the time to really make me A, read something, and B, learn what I needed to learn about taking care of parakeets.
So did it started forming in your mind that you wanted to take care of animals and pets differently at that point? Because I'm looking for the spark that made you say, there's actually a job for this. I mean, maybe you were too young, but I doubt it. I feel like you were probably brilliant very early on.
Well, so that spark that you're talking about, the wind. So my mother's a registered nurse, and I got to see her leaving the house in the whites, and I got to hear stories about people in hospitals and doctors. So very early on, I got the impression that human medicine might not be my jam. I loved science in school, and in first grade at St. Joachim, I read this book, What I Want to Be from A to Z, and V was veterinarian. And I was like, wow, these people take care of animals. So from that point on, that was it. I was going to be a veterinarian.
Wow. And how old were you?
I was in first grade.
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is what I always hear over and over again from people that are in the medical field, is that they knew very early on that they wanted to be a doctor or something, so I love that. So what do veterinarians learn? Like, you said you don't like snakes, which I think is amazing. Do you know how to care for a turtle, for example? Like, what kind of animals can you care for? Can you care for horses? Can you fix a horse or a cow? Like, tell me a little bit more about this.
So that's an interesting question. So most veterinary schools, there are 33 accredited vet schools in America. Most of them are 4 years. And there's our accreditors, and I'm going through this now because I'm founding a new college. Our accreditors say to us, here are what students need to know. And it's basically the domestic species. So that's the horse, cow, the dog and cat are together, the pig, and we need to know a little bit about chickens. So I did anatomy in all of those. The big ones, though, were the horse and the cow because they represent a whole group of animals. And then the dog is the one that you mostly learn a lot about. And then you learn the differences between the dog and the cat. And then the pig also has a few differences. But people that are interested in other species, at Illinois, I was given the opportunity. We had a lab with birds where we learned how to handle them. And I'm sure there were some snakes there that I was like, eek. So you do learn, you have to learn all the domestic species. Our licensing exam has all of them on it. So you might get a question about a cow, a sheep, a deer, a parrot. Any of those species could show up on our licensing exam.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. I'm just thinking to myself, as I was researching you and looking up the field, I was like, wow, like what if you do have an aversion to an animal? How do you become this? How do you become a veterinarian? But
Yeah.
you just kind of explained it to me, which I really love. So now that I kind of have an understanding of your obsession and how you've translated that to passion and a career, I do want to understand a little bit more about your background. You described your mother as someone who cultivates your curiosity. And I didn't hear about anybody else in your family, but what type of environment did you grow up in? I mean, it sounds like it was very nurturing. Can you share
Yes.
a little bit more about that for any parents that are listening?
Yeah. So two-parent household on the south side of Chicago. And as again, I said, we're selling the house now because my father recently passed and my mother's in a nursing home. But I walked to my Catholic school that was 2 blocks away. Um, and um, and my parents were very invested in my education. I am the youngest of 3 and I'm the only girl. And as an adult now, I realized that there was a little bit of sexism there because my brothers got to do a lot of things that I wasn't allowed to do. But in the end, I think it worked out for me. So they allowed me to be adventurous and to a point. So again, with the vet thing, my mother made sure that I went to Purdue's vet school open house when I was in high school. I went to U of I's vet school open house when I was in high school. And my mother will tell you that she's allergic to all animals, which I'm like, you have to be skin tested. You can't be allergic to everything. But she took me to any zoo anytime I wanted to go. So she was, even though this wasn't her game, she was down to help me do anything that I needed to do, become a veterinarian. And my father, I think, even up until his passing, would introduce me to everyone as, this is my daughter. She's a doctor. She's a veterinarian. So again, everybody was very interested. I will say that I think culturally, sometimes for Black and brown folks, for veterinary medicine, our families are sort of like, and my grandfather said this to me, I don't know why you want to be an animal doctor. Why don't you go to school to be a real doctor? He even said to me the summer before I started vet school, I had already been admitted, if you go to human medical school, I will pay everything for you because I don't know why you want to do this. And that was a lot of money, right? But I hadn't taken the MCAT, I hadn't applied. He made it sound like, oh, if I just called them, they would say, hey, yeah, you can come here. So,
I
so
love that.
yeah, I don't know why you want to be this animal doctor, but it was just always a passion of mine. And I'm just very fortunate that my parents always supported it. And in my grade school, when I was in 6th grade or something like that, we were required to do a science project. And then in 7th grade, I think maybe it was optional, but I did the same project again. And if you won at our school, you got to go to the science fair, to the citywide fair. And I went there. And then in 8th grade, I did that same project again. And I actually went to the state fair at U of I when I was in 8th grade. So I had a really amazing science teacher who made it cool to be a girl who liked science, and really invested in me spending time working on and cultivating my love of science.
I love that. So I just have to go back to this thing because I have 3 sons of my own, and one of my sons in particular is fighting me and battling me on something he wants to do and something I don't think he should do. How did you turn down, an offer for a free ride?
Well, there were a couple of reasons. One, I mean, he literally said this like in June, and I was starting vet school in August or something like that. So it was absurd. I had a lot of anxiety about the MCAT. I didn't have to take the MCAT. Only one vet school in the country makes you take that. So I didn't take that as a fallback. And I think way in the back of my head, I never wanted to have a fallback thing because I really wanted to do this. So
Mhm.
it wasn't, I wasn't sort of like, oh man, I should consider that, or maybe I should sit out a year. And I'm old. So this was long before gap years. Those didn't exist in the 80s and 90s, right, Dr. Martin? We didn't do those. You kept going. So,
Well, at least not for us.
yeah, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
they did exist for many other people in the majority, but not for us.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because jokingly, when I graduated from high school, I said to my mother, I'm not sure I want to go straight to college. I think I want to take a year off and backpack across Europe and find myself. And my mother said, pardon my French, I know damn well who you are, and you're going straight to college.
Yeah, exactly. That's
So,
exactly my point. Your mother was on point.
yeah.
I love this. So, speaking of MCAT, you were intimidated by taking the MCAT. I've heard this all time and time again from, my relationship with CPASS Foundation and all the amazing doctors like yourself that are part of it. what was your relationship with math? I mean, I feel like there's something about the MCAT and math. Math is challenging, and for a lot of people, but especially young girls. I was just on a series of 5 calls with these super scientists at NASA. There was only a few women on the call, and then I was on a text thread, and there was a woman asking, why aren't there any female? Why are all the gynecologists male? And I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much to do. There's so much to say around this. And I feel like it starts with math.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do as I get to go out into the community and interact with young Black and brown girls. I think that there is this, people are told that they're not, girls in particular are told they're not supposed to be good at math, or it's not cool to be good at math. And I think culturally for us, there's this thing about it's not cool to be smart in school too, that wasn't there in the 60s and 70s and maybe the mid 80s. And now I think that a lot of kids have this idea that being smart in school is not cool, which I think we need to get rid of that notion. But again, my private Catholic schools were really good at, you are good at math. In fact, I think that they did it in probably a way I wouldn't, because there was the smart group, the middle group, and then the other group, which I would hope that they wouldn't do that now. But I knew which group I was in, and so I knew that I had expectations, and my mother, I always had expectations of me also, in particular. I will say this though, I went to Illinois for undergrad, and some vet schools, and I knew that I needed to take stats and algebra, trig, and all these other algebra courses. And I started algebra trig, and I stumbled, and I withdrew from it, and then I took it again, and it wasn't looking good, and I withdrew from it. And Willie, who was running the CHAMPS program at the time, I came home, and CHAMPS paid for me to take it, and I took it at a community college here in Chicago. And the teacher called me and was like, I just want you to know you got the highest grade on the final. You got a B+ out of the class. You did great. So then I knew not to take calculus at Illinois. I took it at Olive Harvey, had the best math teacher I've ever had in my life at Olive Harvey Community College in calculus. He was amazing. I love calculus because I had a great teacher who was invested. So I think that part of us having issues with math is sometimes the teachers assume that we can't do it or that we don't want to do it, and they translate that to us or transmit that to us. So if you have a teacher who believes in you, who believes that you can do it, and you have parental support, I think you can do it. Or even if you don't, I have to admit freely that with this new math, I have a 21-year-old, and she brought home math when she was in 4th grade. And I was like, what is this? And I know how to do math, but the way they teach it now didn't make any sense to me. So I do think that there has to be some effort on the part of the parent to, if you can't figure it out, let's find somebody who can help your kid with whatever it is. And I've been fortunate to have that.
I really love that. My youngest son, he has ADHD, and we learned one year when he broke his wrist. He couldn't write. He's a lefty. He couldn't write with his left hand, and it was just like a whole thing. And we have a math tutor here, fortunately, to support him, because he also had some challenges in math. And I really do think his early teachers did not intercept him properly. To your point. But we learned with the tutor, because he couldn't write, the tutor had to write for him for the homework, and discovered that he was very responsive to the Socratic method of teaching. Mm-hmm. And that transformed his grade in his class experience. Now that's a method that is really expensive, and public schools or private schools, many of them don't have teachers that know how to do it, and they don't have the bandwidth because there's too many students. But I agree with you. I think we'd have more geniuses, Black and brown, coming through the pipeline if we had better interventions and more positive, experiences with teachers, and definitely less racism on the part of the white teachers that are engaging with our Black and brown students. I mean, I see it all the time. Sometimes it's not even obvious. It's just like inherent bias that inhibits the young person from, experiencing the best that they can. And it's just unfortunate. There's a lot to do, but you mentioned something. You mentioned the CHAMPS program. I'm curious, how and when did you learn about that program? I mean, did somebody were you just like, oh my gosh, there's a brilliant Black girl over there, we have to help her, let's go? Like, were there scouts back then from CHAMPS? I mean, how did they get to you?
Yeah, so Coretta, just like as you jumping in, we have a lot of running bets on the best stories of how folks got engaged with CHAMPS. So we're curious to hear yours matched up to someone walking up into a grocery store and saying, you need to go to CHAMPS. So let's hear it.
So again, my mother is like magic, right? So I just know that one day she was like, "You're going to Champs," and I'm like, "What's that?" And she said, "You know, we're going to drop you off on Saturday at IIT." And I didn't know where I was going or what I was going for, but I've never met a stranger. So I got dropped off and I met a bunch of people and we just hung out. And funnily enough, so one of the people that was in it in the summer when I stayed there the summer after my sophomore year, she just reminded me because she lives in Atlanta now. She's a physical therapist, and we're still in touch. And she said, we had just checked into the dorm. Had just unpacked, and I was on the phone in the hallway, and she came out to use the phone. And she said that I said to her after, she said, "Will you let me know when you're off the phone?" And I said, "Sure." And I told her that day, I said I wasn't going to make any friends while I'm here, and you turned out to be nice. And we were in each other's weddings, and she's my son's godmother, and we've known each other since 1980. I don't even know, 86, 87, but it all started in the hallway at IIT.
Wow. And your mom, I mean, so did your mom find out about Champs because she was in the medical field somehow? I mean, what kind of environment was happening where she even heard about this?
Well, so she taught in the nursing program at Olive Harvey Community College. So she talked to people all the time and ran into people all the time. And she again, is my mother's a Labrador. She doesn't know a stranger, and she's a Labrador mixed with a pit bull. So I remember the city of Chicago hired a Black woman as the vet for the pound. And it was on the news that they had this Dr. Donna Alexander. She was a Penn grad. She was coming to Chicago to run the Chicago area pound. And within 2 weeks, I found myself sitting in her office talking to her because my mother saw it on the news and she was like, "I'm going to make that happen for you." So I don't know how she found out about Champs, but she knew about everything. And she picked me up and dropped me off until I got my driver's license, and then she would let me drive.
I love the story because it really is a match made in heaven, because you have a mom that has a spidey sense and she's very resourceful, and a daughter that's receptive and saying yes and I want to go. I mean, you just feel like it sounds very symbiotic. And the other thing I'll mention, I love the fact that you compare it to a laboratory, because it actually makes me feel better, because I have a trauma story where I was at a company once. And I'm kind of like your mom. Okay. I'm not trying to be like an egomaniac about this, but I'm kind of like your mom. Like, I leave no stone unturned, and I know no strangers. So maybe a combination of both of you. But I was at this company once, and the guy that owned the company said, "Oh, give the job to JinJa. She's a bird dog." And I was like, what the heck? What is that? What does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? But so I feel like you've just released like a trauma response in my spirit, because now I understand what he meant. He's like, she will get the job done. I mean, there was more happening there at the time, but I feel like vindicated right now that it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Well, and I will say this. So I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. And when I graduated, all my friends, like my best friend, one went to Macaulay, one went to Longwood. And so I was prepared. I really wanted to go to Seton. And my brother, who is 6 years older than me, went to St. Francis de Sales. So I had long conversations with my mother about wanting to go to Catholic school. And my mother said, "You're not." And I was like, but I really want to. And she said, "You're not." And believe it or not, I said, "But I want to keep wearing a uniform." And she said, "You're not doing that." And she said, "You're going to go to this other school. You're going to go to Whitney Young." And I hadn't heard a whole bunch about Whitney Young. I didn't know much about Whitney Young. And I was like, I don't want to go there. Like, I just, and it was a fight until she took me to their open house. And I watched the band perform, and people were on the bleachers stomping this song, "We Go to Whitney Young," that I had never heard before. I honestly haven't heard it since. But at that open house, I was like, this is done. This is my school. These are my people. It had those 3 fancy buildings. I was like, I'm good. Now, I didn't realize how long it took us to drive there from the south side of Chicago, and that it was going to take me an hour and a half to get there on the bus and the train. But I will tell you what, by the time I was a senior, I could draw a map of Chicago like nobody else. Yeah. I knew the city from north to south, east to west, and my best friend and I were in every crevice of this city. So it was a wonderful opportunity. I'm so glad that I got to go there. And it actually, because of the diversity there, prepared me for the whiteness that was the U of I.
Yeah, I love it. So what did you take, the Red Line or the Metro?
We would take the Jeffrey. We would go get on the Jeffrey.
Okay.
We would get on the 6 or the 14 and go downtown, and then we would decide if we were going to take the L or if we were going to take another. The 20, I think, took you
Yeah.
from, so.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
hilarious. Yeah, I went to
Yep.
Whitney Young too, so I
Oh,
remember.
okay.
I mean, I got all the stories. It's wild. So okay, so I want to also switch up a little bit. I want to talk about your role at Midwestern University,
Okay.
which is amazing. Can you talk a little bit about your role there, because you just were appointed, right, Dean of this new school, which is amazing. And what kind of impact do you want to have? And then adding on to that question. And I know you'll be able to keep track. When you went into the interview process, did you propose the organization of this? Did you like strategize with the team? Like what was that process like a little bit? And that's sort of a 3-part question.
Yeah. So the first part is that I worked for Midwestern. They have a Glendale campus and a Downers Grove campus. The Glendale one is in Arizona, and I worked there in 2016 to 2018. And that story actually began sort of that the founding dean of the college was stepping down, and the associate dean for clinical education was becoming the dean of the college. And he reached out to me and asked me to interview. I was living in Nevada, so a whole nother state at the time. And I was actually working in California, again, another state. But I said to him, there's no way I can work there because I live in Nevada. I have a husband and a daughter here, and my son was already in college. But I said, what I will do is I'll interview, because everybody knows when you interview for a position, other people interview. So I went and interviewed in Arizona, and it was a new school, like new buildings, had a new teaching hospital. The last time a vet school had opened, this was in 2016, would have been probably, it might have been actually Western, except for the ones in the Caribbean, Western in the late 80s. So I would have been in high school. So I saw these new buildings, and I saw a dedicated faculty and a new young faculty. And I interviewed for associate dean there, and he actually offered me the job while I was there, which is unheard of. And I accepted while I was there, which is also unheard of. And if my husband watches this podcast, that'll be the first time that he learns this.
I love it.
And then I commuted from Arizona to Nevada for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And there came a point after we graduated the first 2 classes and the whole curriculum had been built out and had run through 2 classes. It felt like a time where I could go home and reconnect with my daughter. And I felt like she needed me to be back home. So I did resign in 2018. So the fall of 2018, I left. So they knew me. So in 2022, I filled in at their hospital just to come back and visit and do some more internal medicine stuff. I'm a small animal internist by training, just to see sick dogs and cats and interact with students. And the president of the university talked to me then about her vision of starting a campus here. And she knew I was from Chicago. And she said, would you be interested in something like that? And I said, yeah, I think so. I'd be interested in, I love education. I love talking to students, watching the light come on and seeing how they think about education. But I also like talking to teachers about it and being thoughtful about how do we, again, as I'm an internist, I know that everything I know isn't what a young veterinarian needs to know. So how do we decide what they need to know versus what they can learn in real life? So I like talking and thinking about education. So the job appealed to me from that standpoint. And it also appeals to me because I believe in the power of a positive environment and culture. And I wanted to be able to start a new college and imbue it with positivity, where people feel supported and cared about, and where we also focus on a great culture. So sort of one of the things that I've said is that if the best surgeon in the world, veterinary surgeon, approached me about working here, and he or she had a reputation for being difficult or not easy to work with, I don't want them. I want someone who is excited about teaching, excited about supporting their colleagues, excited about coming to work every day and doing those things, and the type of person who might realize that sometimes there's not some glorious aspects to this job, but we do it anyhow. So I used to tell people when I was associate dean at Michigan State, the difference between me and maybe someone who is an associate dean not in veterinary medicine is if I'm walking through the teaching hospital and I see a turd on the floor, I'm going to stop and pick it up. And that doesn't happen outside of veterinary medicine. I think when you get promoted, there's a place where you don't maybe do some of those kinds of things. And I don't think that's true in vet medicine. I think that we should always have the bandwidth to stop and help clean something up, even when we're in administration in veterinary medicine. So did I touch on everything that you asked?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you absolutely did. And that was really helpful to understand that, because it really does show an empathy and altruism that you're trying to bring to, your new role, as dean at Midwestern University. So I think that's really beautiful, and it's definitely inspiring. There's seems to be lacking these days of caring for others and caring for environment, and sort of just noticing things that could be fixed, and people just keep walking and don't try to fix. I'm really curious. So this is, and I heard you say that, she interviewed you. I thought, oh my gosh, there's women at the helm here.
Yes.
I wanna ask you about Black women in medicine and careers. I feel like a lot of Black women, they're practicing and then they leave practice, and then they, go inside or become part of administration. My cousin did that. She's retired now, and she left practice and she, rolled into healthcare administration. And she's a Black woman. Is there something going on behind the scenes that Black women are the very few Black women that we have practicing medicine, which I don't feel like we have a lot. I have to look up the statistics on that, but is there something around Black women in medicine that leave practice to go inside and, for example, you're a dean, you're becoming a dean, and there's, my cousin, she ran administration, made a ton of money, but no longer dealing with, humanity the way that they used to. Is there something going on?
Well, so human medicine and veterinary medicine differ in that regard, in a couple of regards. So first of all, when we look at the population of veterinarians, there are about 135,000 of us in the US. We are the whitest profession in America. Farming is more diverse than veterinary medicine.
I actually have a statistic that's going to, I just might as well read it since you're there right now. According to U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2.2% of veterinarians in the United States were Black in 2022. 91.4% were white. 4.3% were Asian, and 0.5% were Hispanic Latinx.
So actually that number, the number that I have from the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges for Black is 1.2%. So even lower. So
wow, that's probably a current number then, right? This is 2022. So it's dropped.
So since we talk about statistics, let's just drop in. I'm assuming, Coretta, that extends even to the faculty of veterinary colleges. So if you can't see, you can't be it. So it begins, not only does it begin when that young child of color brings their pet into the veterinary clinic, but if they want to find a mentor, it's even deeper than that. Is that correct? Is that fair to say?
Oh, it's absolutely true. I mean, everybody knows Dr. Janet Gamble on the corner of 79th and Ashland. And for 50 years, if you were a Black person from Chicago who was interested in being a veterinarian, no matter where you ended up going to vet school, we all went to her hospital to hang out.
Oh.
So, and yeah, everybody. And she doesn't own it now. I think she's passed away, but there's another sister that owns it. I don't even know her, but I know that hospital is Black owned and has been forever. So,
It's
so it's, I think, on 79th and Ashland. It's right on the corner, right at the bus stop.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And just so while we're on statistics real quick, and I'm a plug, Coretta knows I'm a plug the smartest person in my family, Dr. Kenneth Pierce. And at the time, we did not know what he was going to pursue, but he became a veterinarian, not just a veterinarian, an ophthalmologist veterinarian. So you just heard the statistics from Coretta, JinJa, that just imagine how many ophthalmologist veterinarians there are that were Black in the country. And at the time he graduated, I believe it was when he finished at that school that is north of the University of Michigan, was around, I think that was about 20, oh man, he's going to kill me, about 2010 maybe, when he finished his specialty. But let's just say that the timing doesn't matter. The point is, when he finished at that time, he was one of 2 Black ophthalmologist veterinarians in the country at that time. And now to this day, he's mentioned to me now there's 4 Now it's 2024. There's 4 Black ophthalmologist veterinarians that specialize in that. So we can have a longer discussion, but the point of the statistic is it's just wow.
Yeah. So I just have to say he was the first Black male boarded veterinary ophthalmologist also. So, and he
Oh,
is,
wow.
I love him. But anyhow,
I guess, getting back to this challenge of lack of diversity. And I love that, Stephen said, a child goes into a veterinarian with her animal or his animal, and the vet there is not a person of color. Can you talk a little bit about why that matters? I mean, and I say this because I have 3 sons, and Stephen knows this. I'm always calling saying, please find me a Black male therapist for my child. Please find me a Black pediatrician, which I do have, by the way, and I do have a Black male therapist. But why does it matter to have people of color in the vet space? Really, why does it actually matter?
Well, I think it's just like Stephen said, like if you can see it, you can perceive yourself as that thing. And so I think it's really important that we have, it's one thing to see somebody on television, it's something else to actually meet and talk to somebody in person who is that thing, and they can tell you about what their issues were and the pitfalls they had and all those kinds of things. So I do think that, and I've been reading vet school applications for 100 years now, and I see non-Black kids say all the time, well, the vet, they got jobs at the family vet, they got animal experience at the family vet, they knew they wanted to be a vet when the vet came out to take care of their horse or something like that. And so those experiences are also crucial. And vet schools require that you have animal experience and veterinary experience. The more hours you have, the more competitive your application is. So if you at 14 started to go work at the clinic where your parents have taken their pets to be treated, by the time you go away to college, you have a gigantic number of hours versus someone else who didn't have a pet or they didn't take their pet to the vet. We loved Rusty, but my parents took him to the vet maybe 4 times.
Oh, poor Rusty.
Yeah. Or you just didn't have the bandwidth to ask somebody, can I go? Or even I remember getting the phone book when I was in 8th grade and calling a bunch of practices, and they were all like, no, 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 no. So you need that exposure. And there's always this idea, especially for, I think, vets of color, we're going to reach back because somebody did it for us.
Let me ask you a follow-up to that then.
Let me do my follow-up just to thread us a little bit, because I thought there was real quick, JinJa. This is a connection. I'm going to thread us a little bit, but it just, our history is just so intertwined. So here Coretta talked about that many of our white counterparts had the opportunities to be on farms, okay, our own farms. Let's go back to our history. And we know, if we look at Black farming and Black owned farms in this country, and how that has kind of just been intentionally decimated, gets to this larger point, these opportunities that, so if we don't own the land, or if we didn't have those Black farms, but on that East Coast and in the Deep South, you can see that our child may not have that ever opportunity to get that farm experience to put on the application for free. I mean, just imagine trying to go in the urban areas to a clinic and say, and knock on the door and say, hey, can I volunteer, when you have a whole lot of other students trying to volunteer at the same place. So our history is just not one point in time. It's all these historical points that kind of connected and kind of unfortunately created these situations, scenarios where we have to work a little harder to get our children aware and just excited about STEM. So I just wanted to say that, because when you said that, I did my dissertation on Black farmers, and I can remember now connecting this, that there was only a few of them. But JinJa, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to Stephen's point, is this an opportunity to educate young people and say, this is an opportunity for you to go into the medical field. You don't have to take the MCAT. You don't have to be in school for 25,000 years and come out 500,000 in debt. Like, there actually are opportunities. And by the way, look around you, look at your environment. You already are sort of partway there to get there. And I feel like that, to me, is a strategic conversation. And by extension, if you can have that conversation, how do you how do you best tell it? Like I look at films like Dr. Dolittle and I look at the movie Pets and things like that. Like how do you have this
But
conversation? Because it seems to me that there's a lot of Black people with a lot of pets when they're young. And I just feel like there's a conversation missing somewhere.
well,
What do
Ginger,
you think we should do?
Ginger,
Coretta?
at one point is we have to use, instead of medical careers, we have to just say the health field, which
Yes.
encompasses everyone. But
Yeah.
also, I just want to make correct. If she's getting prepared to answer this question, one of the things is fortunately or unfortunately, we had the Cosby Show. We had ER. I mean, all
Yeah.
now we got Chicago Med. Now imagine there's Chicago Vet. I mean, on NBC. I mean, would that
Yep.
happen? I mean, what is sexy about the vet? Chicago Vet. I mean, there you go. I totally correct that.
Well, first of all, there are 19 shows between Animal Planet and Discover that are focused on vets, and there are 2 that are very big. One is Critter Fixers. They're down in Georgia, and they're doing a ton of kids events, and they're moving all around the country doing Vet for a Day. They're doing a lot of really good stuff with major cities going in and doing things with kids. I just did one event with them in Atlanta at the
Oh, wow.
Atlanta Zoo, and then there's another vet show out of Texas, and there's 3 doctors. I think they're in Houston. Now, the crazy thing is there are 3 doctors in Texas, and then there's Bernard and Terrence in Atlanta. Because there's so few of us, I know one of the vets of the 3, and I know Bernard and Terrence. Like, so you would like to say, like, if there were a human, I don't know Dr. Pimple Popper, but I know the vet Dr. Pimple Popper. There was one of those too. So there's so few of us that we end up knowing each other, especially those of us that became specialists. So I think that us getting out and doing events and getting in the community,
Okay.
going and exposing kids to, there's a disproportionate, at least in my experience, a disproportionate number of young Black kids in the city that are scared of dogs, right? Like they see one, and I remember a dog was loose in my neighborhood and everybody was jumping on the cars. And like every dog that's running around, sometimes they're just happy to be out the yard. They're not necessarily going to attack you. So we need to have, if my husband would let me, I would have a therapy dog and I would bring him to classrooms, but our last dog died and he said, I can't get any more. So I'm going to ask you all to give me a puppy for my birthday. And then I'll say it was a gift from CPASS. I have to take it.
No. See, that's how I got my pet. Is that I told the family that no, and after the last wonderful pet we have for 13 years, I said no more. Then we went to Paws, Chicago, and my wife, and I knew I lost the argument even going, but we walked, and then we saw now we got this 55-pound puppy who just turned 1 year. That I was like, I thought I was done, and now here we are.
I love that. I love it so much. Speaking of, these different, people that are across the industry that there's very few. And by the way, Wildcrafts is the show that educated all 3 of my sons on all kinds of things related to nature. But I'm curious, what kinds of careers are there in veterinary medicine that are non-traditional, right? So I just was on this 5-day-long calls with NASA. And I think about, the veterinarians that have to be part of NASA because they send a lot of animals up in space before they send humans, right? Because it's safety first. Yep. Like people that take care of whales. Like there's this horrible movie called Blackfish that destroyed me. And there's probably careers in animal ethics, animal nutrition. Like what about people that make apps? And there's even like TikTok famous influencers in animal and pet space that I know are getting some kids really excited. But what kinds of things do you think we could be talking about for non-traditional roles?
So I actually met with a vet yesterday. She's a veterinarian. She has a master's in public health, and she's done 2 fellowships at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. So she is a veterinary. She's an epidemiologist, and she's interested in the intersection of animal and public health, zoobiquity. And so she's moving back home, and she's really interested in getting people excited about careers in public health as veterinarians. And the CDC has they have, I think, 140 vets there, and they have these ones that go in when there are outbreaks and especially if there's an outbreak that seems like it came from animals and moved into humans, and they send these teams in. I think it's the Epidemiology Inspection Services, EIS. So they get to go. And there are diseases that actually move from animals to people or people to animals. And So those are really cool things. The Food and Drug Administration employs veterinarians also.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, and any drug that you take in the United States was tested first on at least one animal model, probably two, before it moved into human clinical trials.
Got it.
There are groups of veterinarians called lab animal specialists that make sure that the people that are studying the drugs understand the animal and make sure that the animals are healthy. Because if the animals aren't healthy, then the drug studies aren't helpful. So there are lab animal vets that do that. And again, there are people that are either lab animal vets or non-lab animal vets at the Food and Drug Administration. Every slaughter plant in the United States where animals are being euthanized for us to consume, there is a veterinarian in that plant when those animals are being slaughtered. They have to be healthy when they walk in. Because again, we don't want a diseased animal entering our food chain and making us ill. So the Food Safety Inspection Service is womaned by veterinarians. So
Wow.
Yeah,
There's so many.
yeah,
It sounds like
that
there's
was
like,
one of the most important parts when I was health commissioner was communication with our county veterinarian.
mm,
You would think having chief medical officer, but now in the last kind of decade, 2 decades now, the disease is jumping from animal to human
wow.
because of human interaction on this planet has been critical to our infectious disease epidemiology. But a quick question, Coretta. I know we talked quite a bit about black veterinarians, or that what we where are there enough? Will there be enough? What as a proposed dean and thinking about just the diversity, what are you seeing particularly for our Latino population? Is this the same thing happening, or is the awareness and the outreach the similar that we have to do not only in the black community but in the Latino community?
yeah, it's absolutely the same. And actually, their numbers are a little bit better than ours. So there are more Latino students in vet school right now than there are Black ones in veterinary school. So, and there's now a Latinx group that has formed in addition to a lot of other affinity groups across the profession. So I think that their awareness is getting better. And, we have historically, some HBCUs have had, Tuskegee obviously is a HBCU that has a College of Veterinary Medicine. There isn't an HSI, a Hispanic Serving Institution, that has a College of Veterinary Medicine, except that Mayagüez in Puerto Rico is opening a vet school. So there will be in the not continental, but in the U.S., in North America, Hispanic Serving Veterinary College as well. I think that but I think, I think that some of the struggles that they've had have been the struggles that we have, that you have family saying, why would you want to be that kind of doctor? And, we have to fight that stigma. And then, vet school, at least for me at Illinois, was not the most comfortable situation. And I think that as our numbers are so small, that becomes true for a lot of people of color, whether you're Black or Latino, it's not a comfortable situation. But again, there are affinity groups all over the country now embedded within each of the schools, and they have national groups so that they meet together. And I think that those of us that are people of color that are graduate veterinarians now reach back to the students. I had a student yesterday reach out to me who's at North Carolina State that I've never met, who said, I'm looking for a Black veterinary anesthesiologist and dentist. Can you help me find one? And I responded to her. But again, we're a small group, and I actually started a list of Black veterinary specialists a couple of years ago because I was interested in where we all were. And so somehow she knew to ask me where to find these people.
Well, I would love to get that list so that we can have them on the podcast. But also, when we have these mentoring nights, I think that's just so important to have. So, and as you're talking, one of the things is how I'm sitting here thinking about how as a pathway or pipeline program focus is how we outreach. It's really talking to the family, and it's not just talking about, as Digital was highlighting, all these professions. Like when I'm talking, I'm saying to them, there are a number of 9 to 5 professions in the health space that you come out with really no debt, 6 figures, and some things that you have not talked about. And I don't think we've kind of changed that. And it got me thinking that when we start to design our outreach here at CPASS to inform things about veterinary medicine, maybe we need to start with Americans spend upwards of $80 billion a year in the pet industry.
Mhm.
And that's not just counting everything else, from veterinary care and food, etc. And maybe if we shared that, start with that, then that conversation that you're having or you're hearing of families saying, well, why are you going in there? And make it about why are you not going in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
And
imagine 80 billion or more.
yeah. Well, and I don't think people know how to translate that into what they make. So I will
Yeah.
say the graduates of Midwestern's College of Vet Medicine last year, the average starting salary was around 130-ish, somewhere like that. And do they come out with student loan debt? They do. But right now, so like, let's say you want to be a specialist. So I went to 4 years of vet school, and then I did a 1-year internship and a 3-year residency. So I did 4 additional years of training because I wanted to be a specialist. And it just so happens, it wasn't my goal at the time, but I stayed and worked at a College of Veterinary Medicine I finished my residency in 2000 and I left in 2014. If you work for a nonprofit for 10 years, you're a student currently, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we don't
right
know.
now, your student loans are forgiven.
Yeah.
So that is a wonderful opportunity to do something, to give back in the profession. I will say I have an amazing retirement plan, and I've really enjoyed what I've done. And I am connected to students for 5,000 years. So, I mean, some of my former students are parents now. I'm sending baby gifts and asking if I can be the grandmother. So it's just been a wonderful opportunity for me to connect. And even one of the stories that I'll share is his cousin was an intern at the University of Tennessee. And so, I think it's 80% of Black vets in the United States go to Tuskegee. And I did not. His cousin went there for undergrad, but he did not go there for vet school. But because this world is so small, someone called me one day who was at the University of Tennessee, and they always say this, do you know Kenneth Pierce? And I was like, no, I don't know him. Like, why would I? I didn't know him. And she said, well, he's an intern here and he's amazing. I want you to remember his name. And if you ever have the opportunity to do something to help him, I want you to do it. Now, the person who said that to me was my 3rd-year resident when I was a first year. So I said, okay, I'll remember the name. So fast forward, I think it was 4 years later, I'm walking down the hall at Michigan State's College of Veterinary Medicine, minding my own business, and I see the 2 ophthalmologists, both of whom were white, walking with a Black guy. And they said, hey, Coretta, this is one of our candidates we're interviewing for residency. And I said, I didn't remember his name. I said, did you do your internship at Tennessee? And he said, yes. And I looked at them and I said, you're taking him. He's amazing.
Love it.
And I called my resident mate and I said, I think he's here. And I went back to the ophthalmologist and I said, seriously, you all have to take him. And I can't sit here and say I'm the singular reason that they took him, but I was part of the reason.
Well, like I said, I'm not going to hold.
love that.
I'm not going to hold that against
Yeah.
you for sending my cousin to Michigan State. That's what she's talking about. But
I mean,
but you're absolutely right. Just walking in parallel with him in his stories, in how he's connecting, and in that group of Black veterinarians across the country, how they connect in, it's just so critically important, and it's just wonderful to hear how that connection is inspiring the next generation, because it's we absolutely need this, and for me, being an epidemiologist, a former health commissioner, I have a dog in this fight, pun intended. that we need those kind of high qualified individuals in public health practice, because that's who's going to save us as we moving into 2030, 2040.
Yeah, and I think too, we probably need more activation on social media so that it's not an insular experience that you're describing, but it actually gets out and shared more broadly to the public and young people, especially young people that are, consuming an extraordinary amount of content on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Like, there's a really interesting TikToker, dog_and_his_boomer, which is like, the dog and his boomer, like, versus, boomer and my dog, and he just has 1 million followers and he shares a lot of content. He's probably making money, getting sponsorships, and who knows, but I do think that, if I had a vision for what you could be doing is, you start a TikTok channel and start, sharing your day to day and having conversations like this, because it sounds like you want to, and you want to encourage people to participate in your the building of what you're trying to build and your vision. And the best way to do that and inspire young people is to use the tools of social media. I don't know if TikTok's going to make it after January 19th, but
Yeah.
you know, there's other platforms, and I'm happy to talk to you about that later. But I have a couple more questions to wrap up because it's almost time, and I feel like we didn't give people a chance to ask questions, but maybe we can spend a little time over. But there's before I have some rapid fire questions for you, because there are like some really fun things I want to know about you. I just want to briefly touch on artificial intelligence. So one of the things that years ago, and it was actually during the pandemic when we started seeing images of Spot, you know, the robotic dog from Boston Dynamics.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, they modeled this after a dog. Why a dog? Like, why not, you know, why not a, I don't know, any other kind of animal? But I did some research on this, and there were no veterinarians involved in this application, but I learned a term called animal locomotion experts. And I was like, what kind of thing is that? Like, but you know, just to kind of, refocus this, is there artificial intelligence involved? Like, what's happening in the AI world in, your industry? Is there anything going on? Or are students learning about it? Like, how do you take what you're to the future, which is, I mean, the AI is going bananas. I don't know if you saw last week, they showed this robot that has like skin and like bones on the inside, and it's moving like a person. It was wild. And I was like, what is happening? So what's going on with,
So we are using it in education. There's lots of conversations about how do we use it? What do we say to students? What do we do about it?
Okay.
I was at a seminar this summer at the big internal medicine meeting, and someone said, vets who use AI, it said, AI won't replace veterinarians, but veterinarians who use AI will replace those who don't. So we need to be thinking about how we're going to implement artificial intelligence. A lot of vets have a big struggle with getting their medical records done. There's a big push in human medicine to use AI to help you get your records done and to write letters, that when clients need letters and that kind of thing. So we absolutely will be employing some version of AI at some point in our within our curriculum, so that our students leave ahead of the game rather than behind it.
So, I mean, is it a tools-based stuff? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, is there something even broader than that behind, making productivity tools and things like that?
Yeah, there are productivity tools, but someone met with me this week or last week who was, they actually have case-based scenarios that they have built in an AI format, so that it's personal learning. So that if that student makes a mistake, the program throws something differently at them than they would another student who made a different mistake. And that is where we're going. I think a lot of the educational space is going to have to come up with personal learning, because I think a lot of students changed because of the pandemic. What we found in vet medicine and in human medicine, people don't want to go to class anymore. They don't want to sit in a giant group in a big lecture hall. They want things that seem to be directed at them. So I think we're going to have to see a lot of change. We're going to have to create a lot of change to meet that sort of personalized learning need that our students are going to want.
So I'm not hearing that there's robotic surgeries happening, right? Like there are on the human side. Because
you mean like when they go in and take the uterus out and things like that?
Whatever. I mean, is there any AI or robotics tools, that are starting to sort of flood or come in, or are you seeing things that are saying, you know what, this is coming, or maybe it's already here? I'm sort of putting that out there.
There's some AI tools that I'm aware of where we're reading. They're helping us to read X-rays. So rather than the veterinarian just looking at it with your eyes, there's AI that's looking at it and saying, here's what I see. And then the person looks at it and says, here's what I see. And there's a human study that says when the two come together, the incidence of errors actually goes down quite a bit. So I think there's going to be AI reading X-rays for us in the future. Certainly AI generating some of the paperwork for us and doing those kinds of things. I think for the surgery part, I know that like the person is still running the robots when they do like hysterectomies in women. I don't know of anything like that. I know they're doing laparoscopic surgeries for things like that in veterinary medicine, but not AI stuff. Okay. And I know that the city of New York bought a bunch of those dogs, and right after they bought one of those Boston dogs, a parking structure collapsed, and that first thing they sent the dog in to look for people, because it's really unsteady. And if another human is there, someone might have been underneath something and they could get hurt. So they sent one of the dogs in to try to find people that have survived the collapsed parking lot. I would like, actually, if you all bought me one of those dogs, then that would be really nice. I would accept that.
Stephen, I love Coretta. She has no, she's like me. Like she will ask, because you know what? If you don't ask, you don't receive. So
Right.
what can we do about this, Stephen? Can we
Oh
get
no,
her?
offline. I look forward to writing that grant proposal with Coretta. So I'm putting that down there, and we're gonna sprinkle and add Kenneth Pierce on there, so as the eye candy to make sure that we get the funding. There you
Yes,
go.
Oh my God, I
absolutely.
love that. Well, before I open the floor for questions, I do want some fun questions to ask you. What is your most recommended pet for people with severe allergies? And
Okay.
what about a person with a dog allergy? Is there a dog they can have?
Yeah, they're actually Australian Labradoodles are supposed to be hypoallergenic, and you can actually pay a lot of money to get one that will not elicit an allergic response. There are a couple of breeds of hairless dogs. There's a oh shoot, they have one that wears pants, a Chinese crested, I think. There are they have hair but no fur. I'm sorry, skin but no fur. And then cats, there are a couple of breeds of cats that are hypoallergenic that don't have fur also. But there are other pets, like you don't have to have a dog. Bearded dragons are the dog of the lizard world, and they're supposed to be really fun.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can feed them mealworms, and they come and they do a lot of really fun things. So
I love that. You need to put together like a fact book, that just, I mean, seriously, a lot of families want these questions answered. What nonfiction book are you reading right now?
I just bought, and I haven't started yet, James by Percival. That I can't remember his last name, but it is an adaptation of an additional part of the Huck Finn story. So I think James is
Oh
a young black
yeah.
boy. Yeah.
I
He
heard
went
about
up.
that. I heard about this from his perspective.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
I'm
Yep.
gonna have to get that. So what pets do you have at home?
So right now we have one cat, which interestingly, my husband calls Nabbles, my son calls Mittens, my daughter calls Friend. So the cat responds to nothing. And it was in a box in front of a Walmart with her sister, and it came into a clinic that I was working at in Northern California. So I took her for my daughter, and then someone else took her sister. And it'll be interesting. My daughter's applying to grad school. She's probably going to be moving the cat out of the house. But I call that cat my sister wife. Like she and my husband are completely bonded. They do everything together when I'm here in Chicago. So I'm interested to see if he'll want to get a cat when she moves in with her true owner.
I love it. And then my last question is, because there's people that love plants and animals, right? So what's the
Yes.
best house plant to have if you have a dog or cat in the house?
That is an excellent question. Look, I looked it up because we actually have a ton of plants in our house. I mean, we have 50 plants. My husband has an amazing green thumb.
Yeah, wait. I'm sorry. Well, let's pause for a minute. You have 50 plants.
Yes.
Do you have a greenhouse, or is this just like through your house?
All through our house. I'll send you pictures. So the cool thing though is our cat is smart enough because most of our plants are toxic.
Yes.
Because you asked that question, I had to look it up. So she is just lucky. And we have a fire stick. I don't know if you know what that one is. I knew that one was toxic, but most of our plants are toxic and she just doesn't chew on them. So the best plants are a money tree plant or a Chinese money tree are both not toxic. Money tree plants, though, can be kind of hard to grow. Sometimes they lose their leaves. Spider plants are easy to grow and are non-toxic. Prayer plants are also non-toxic, and they're kind of cool because the leaves close at night and they open during the day. And we have that. We have all of these except the Chinese money tree we don't have. And then there's one called a watermelon plant because the leaves look like a watermelon. That is also non-toxic, and it's kind of easy keeper.
Wow. You know what? This is amazing. I've loved this conversation. Stephen?
Yeah.
I mean, completely like amazing. I mean, it's been so much fun talking to you. And I think we have some ideas for how you can, create some content that can help you get to your mission, and content that's really fun and interesting that people care about, that actually might inspire a young person to want to, become a veterinarian. I think that's great. Stephen, should we open the floor for questions? Do we have any questions in the chat?
Nothing, because many of the questions have been answered through our conversation. So
Okay.
we're kind of, I love these little quick one-on-one. So we don't have any questions now to follow up a lot. Coretta has wonderfully weaved them into her responses. But if you have any more, if you responses or quick questions, that would be great.
Well, actually, no, there is a question coming in from Brittany. She's asking, what advice would you give to young Black and Brown students aspiring to become veterinarians in terms of finding support and resources and financial support?
So I guess that varies, Brittany, across age groups, I guess. So are we talking about undergrad or?
You know what? Why don't we? She says young, so to
Okay.
me, I feel
Okay.
I
like
would
that
say
would
I would
be
say under
high
I would say
school to
undergrad.
college. High school
Yeah.
to
Okay.
college.
So for high school, the one thing that I would say from a financial standpoint, I think it's a little early to think about vet school tuition, although what you do need to be thinking about is managing your grades. So grades are going to be important no matter what. Getting into a good college, they're going to be, we don't necessarily look at high school grades when you're applying to vet school, but that sets the foundation for how you do in college. So grades are going to be very important no matter what. But if you're a high school student and you think I want to be a veterinarian, then I would say contact either a shelter. So when I was 15, I volunteered at the Anti-Cruelty Society. Actually, I worked there from the time I was 15 till I was 18. I would go in on Saturdays, clean cages, and help move animals. So what you need to do is show that you have some animal experience. And again, if you're in the city, it's going to be harder to have large animal like cows and horses experience. But there are clinics and shelters all over town. PAWS has a nice clinic within it. Anti-Cruelty has one. So I would say any one of those opportunities, contact them and say, hey, I'm a high school student. I want to get some animal experience. I think I might be interested in becoming a veterinarian or a veterinary technician. Can I come and hang out at your facility? Depending upon your age, they might say that your parent has to come with you. Maybe they could take a laptop and do some work in the lobby while you're there. They won't have to work with the animals, but they'll have to be in the building. But that would be where I would start is, can I get some animal experience? So that you know that it's something that you are really interested in doing. And then again, maintaining your grades. So do you need to get a tutor? Are you in the CPASS Champs program so that you can get assistance with classes that you might be having difficulty in, or meet other like-minded kids who are also interested in STEM, who maybe they can help you if you're struggling in a class. So focus on your grades, join CPASS, meet other students that are interested in STEM, and then try to get some animal experience either at a clinic or a humane society. And while you're in high school, ask your parents to drive you to the open house at U of I, or when we have our open house, so you can see sort of what kinds of things are happening at vet schools, and start keeping a list. So get a notebook now and keep a list of things that I've done that I'm going to put on my vet school application. And I dissected a frog my junior year of high school, and we looked at mussels in a frog. Like, save all of that stuff now so that you'll have more to put on your application rather than too little.
Is there anything else that a parent can do to help with their children who are thinking about applying to vet school, in addition to what you're saying?
Anything addition that the parent can do? Well, start saving will be the one thing. If you have a 528 account or something like that, and
yeah, you're right. Start saving. I mean, when they're
right,
when they're born.
Yeah, I mean, undergrad is expensive. Vet school is expensive. I will say that when I was in vet school, I was reading the paper, and I don't know if it's still true, but your state senator in the state or representative had an opportunity for a student who was at a state school for that person to waive their tuition. So my 4th year of vet school, I didn't pay tuition because my state representative paid it. I read about it in the paper, and I wrote and applied, and I got it that way. So I don't know if they still do that.
I'm not sure if they still do that, particularly here. I know that was there in Louisiana. So I don't know if we've seen that. But I will say, in addition to help our parents out, that they go to CPASSfoundation.org. We are actually providing financial assistance for students taking the entrance exam, like the test prep, offering test prep for GRE. So we do encourage our parents and our schools and our students to come to CPASSfoundation.org to learn more about the financial assistance we're providing to Illinois scholars who are interested in STEM.
There's actually 2 more questions and one more thing. So CPASS Parent Academy is something that CPASS Foundation just launched within the last year. And you can go there at cpassfoundation.org/program/STEM-parent-academy. And that's actually in the chat for the comments for those of you that want to check that out. It's a really big deal for us. There's just two more questions. This is coming from Vespicon. What can parents do to support their child during vet school? And the second question is coming from Brittany. What has been the most rewarding experience in your career as a vet that reaffirmed your passion for this work? So those are two questions. Those will be the last questions we'll take.
Okay, and I was trying to put in the chat aavmc.org. That's the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges. They actually have a checklist for high school students. Like if you're interested in going to vet school, they sort of have a list of things that you should follow and what you can look forward to.
Okay.
So from Vespicon, to support your child in vet school, we'll
send them school.
Yes, send them food. I will say that. And I I have seen that sometimes we want our students to come home for holidays that aren't necessarily national holidays, so I think that one of the things to think about when we're in vet school is it's very hard. It's a science-based curriculum. Most of the time we're lonely because there's just us in the curriculum or just a few others. So check in on them, but give them some space so that they're able to focus on their work and ask them what they need. Like, what is it that I can do to help you? So be mindful of, do you know what you need and what can I do to help you? So my mother was a really good listener. My mother also was a drop-inner, which you all have, that's not surprising based on what you've heard about my mother. So, if that's what your child needs, then do that. And that also is the beauty of going to school kind of close to family so that they have the opportunity to be around family and to see people. And the most rewarding experience so when I was at Michigan State, they had a pre-professional program called Vetward Bound, and it ran in the summer, and it was 6 to 8 weeks, and the students would live on campus, and it was federally funded, so they would get paid to go there. And so being a part of that program and meeting those students, and many of them have gone on to become veterinarians, but also every summer there would be 1 or 2 young women in that program, and it was for students from underserved areas and also Black and brown students who would tell me that I was the first Black veterinarian that they had ever met. And so I see them now at professional meetings, and it just warms my heart to know that I met them when they were in undergrad, and now they're a veterinarian, and we're at a meeting together, and I'm sitting beside them, bothering them. So it's one of the greatest pleasures in my life. And I was just at a meeting in Atlanta. The American Veterinary Medical Association had their Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Wellbeing Conference, and Dr. Michelle James, who is the 5th Black boarded veterinary neurologist, was at that meeting sitting with me. And I mean, I don't think her own mother is more proud of her than I am when I see her at meetings. And it just warms my heart to see my former students, Black, brown, white, or indifferent. I just love having known that I had that connection with those people when they were vet students.
Wow. Well, this conversation has been remarkable. Dr. Coretta Patterson, thank you so much for joining us on the CPASS Foundation podcast series, Creating Equity in STEM. It's been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank everybody that's joined in for joining us for another episode of Creating Equity in STEM, brought to you by CPASS Foundation. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at CPASS Foundation, and we will see you next time.